Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Well, after the last rose one that I did, I had a lot of emails from some of you about painting, using flowers as reference, but how do you make them more casual like I've been doing for the last several years? So I thought I would do one of those real quick before we go into another landscape and everything. So what I have here is a 11 by 14. It's 14 inches this way. It's a standard size, giving it, of course, my coat of the canvas prep medium that I like to do, sand it with 180 grit sandpaper. I pulled out some Heritage roses. This is one of my favorite roses to paint, and I really love this one with the lavender background. So I thought, I'll put some lavender background into it. And I'll show you guys how I reference or look at and talk about looking at a petal and of a flower, and then what it is that I actually paint. How I could actually take some of the more casual roses I do closer to a photo like that. This time working without a pattern or a drawing. We're just going to put it in here. A rose maybe coming this way, like I like to, the standard Trinity setup that I like, but you could use photos like this with groups of them and paint anything like that with a group of them would be really, really pretty as well. So whatever you want to do. I might put like one goes this way and a couple that just drip down this way, or you can reverse it if you want, whatever you'd like to do. But let's get into it. Let's get going. Okay, so first thing I have to decide is, do I want to work wet into wet? I think I'll work a little wet into wet this time. And what does that mean? That means I add extender now. So I have my normal palette colors, all of the color names and everything I use. And I only use the Heritage MultiMedia paint. This is a paint I developed 17 years ago. And it is a wonderful acrylic, new generation acrylic, so we can slow down and vary the drying times of it. All the links, everything is in the video description down below. But let's make first that kind of lavender color, which means we increase our violet into this, because the Phthalo Blue is very, very powerful, and the Quinacridone Violet is not quite as powerful. So it's going to take 2 to 3 times as much quinacridone as it will be the phthalo to make that kind of lavender color that I want there. Probably went just a touch too far. Let's see, probably a touch too, very close, but just a touch too red on it. It's too violet on it, red violet. So we'll go just a touch more blue. And I don't want to dirty up my white too much, so we'll go add that in. And that's a real pretty color, that bit of that blue. And I have to decide if I'm going to do the roses. Also, we look at our value scale, always looking at our value scale and stuff. So here I'm right about a 6. What value do you want that? Your acrylics are going to dry a little bit darker. To get a lot of interest to white rose, you'll stay in those medium ranges, 5s to 7s. So maybe a little bit lighter. And let's go just a touch more blue. Just a bit. And a little bit lighter here. Matter of fact, so I don't use up all my white on my palette. I have a tube here that is almost gone. So I'll just squirt out a little. I love this color. This lavender color. I want it just a little bit lighter. I want to head up maybe towards that 7, I think. Around a 7 or so. Here, value-wise, that's a pretty color. It's not as bright as blue or anything that I've used before. It's a beautiful lavender color. Now, I'm going to add a little extender to this too. I add it to it when I go to the background, but I'm going to add a little extender to this. And I'm going to add some of this up here as a color onto my palette, because I will use this color because it's a pretty color, and I will use it into my roses later on. So and I do, you've seen me so many times. It's some of the processes, and I kind of want to go through these processes with you. Some of the processes is incorporating that background into the roses. That increases what we call the harmony of the painting. Okay, so your roses just don't look stuck onto the surface because they have something in common with everything that's there. So I'll take my big brush here, As a matter of fact, let's take my big brush. This is a beautiful brush that we manufacture, and this one is really, really old. I used it for years as a varnish brush. Then when it gets old, I use it in this type of painting, but it's a super soft brush. I'm going to put a little white and extender out here. You don't see me do this too much. We'll try to show you some different things here. And let's pre-coat some of this board here with a thin coat of the white here. This will make all of my colors softer in, a little lighter and softer into the white. And I've got a sanding mark coming through right there that I do want to get rid of. So I'll put it a little heavier there. Now let's go right into our lavender color here, and let's drop this in. And we have to decide, so you see that's a real pretty color. We have to decide now, do we want to do it more impressionistic and let some of this white come through? Do you want to put it in heavy here and then do this? Now that you have white, you can soften it down like this. And I like to work small X motions like this. This softens through the background. You'll still leave some of the white there here, but it'll soften and create this kind of cloudy little look to the background, which is really pretty. You can soften any brush marks with slightly larger marks, just very casual. Then I'll put some heavier color right in here, the heavier lavender right in here. And that maybe that main rose will go up against here. That'll be pretty. So we'll vary the actual background of it and let this go real soft. Wipe your brush a bit and just soften that out into the background. That's kind of pretty there. So we hit that color pretty close because it'll dry a bit darker right in there. Now, you know, you can go ahead and paint wet into this. You know, sometimes you see me, and you can, especially if I'm going to paint a white rose, I'll back some of the heavy color out. So let's say we're going to do a rose. I love the center on this one. I'm probably going to want to turn it a little bit. So let's push it right up here, and I'll back out some of the color right here. And I can back it out really fast if I add a little water, but I don't want to do that. I just want to take out some of that thicker color I'll leave a little bit of it, but I want to take out just a touch of that thicker color in there so that it makes it easier for me to get whites in here without them going too cool here. Okay, so that works pretty good. The softer ones and stuff, if we wanted to trail some down, maybe we'll push this one and here. And like I say, we could do a 2 composition. We could take a rosebud right off over here. That would be pretty. Maybe, you know, and you can, that's up to you to decide. Maybe I'll turn this one down slightly. I love these quick, small little compositions of roses. They're some of my favorite things to paint. So, and just by looking like this, you can kind of get an idea where your roses are going to go. I kind of like that little space. I paint a lot of them, and sometimes it seems like you do with things, oh, I've been painting that kind of composition quite a bit, but this is a real pretty kind of composition for it. Now, I'm going to paint this a little bit wet on wet, which means is I'm going to keep my colors wet as I go. So as I push this in, I'm going to start first, and I could use any brush. One of my favorite brushes, which you know, you saw me use in the last video, is the filbert. As a matter of fact, I left a little paint in this one from the last video, so you get to see exactly. I take just a little hand sanitizer and just cleans that right out. You can tell I used a little burnt sienna and yellow last time, and that cleans that right out. Sometimes I'll clean up the handle a little bit too, because I get paint all over the thing. But that gives me a nice, beautiful, soft brush again. So the hand sanitizers, you know, I love it with the acrylics. This I'm just going to poke a little extender in it and keep it here for a bit. Now, I'm probably going to put some other colors down in here, but I'm not real sure yet. So we'll take a look at this first. But I love these hand sanitizers. Anything, I just get this, you know, you get this at your local pharmacy or store and box store, and it's got to be at least 60-70% isopropyl alcohol, and it just cleans it up right away. All right, so let's work on this. So extenders, I'm going to start with some extender. I'll move right over here. Matter of fact, we could have a little bit of that in there. I love into the violets. So we have the violet into that color. So any kind of violet. Let's take our 2 violets here and we'll add some extender. The shadows we keep softer, right? So I will keep my shadow here and I'll start right where that center is. And it is the center, the artist, that makes the rose. And so I just spin that center out like that. Right? And then the next part that really makes the rose is the bowl, the bottom of the bowl. And I'm going to keep this really casual marks here. So right over here, we want to put one right in here. Let's just tap this around, lift the pressure. I love painting with the filbert. It is, for so many, this last couple of years, I've been using my flat a lot. But the filbert is an amazing brush because I can get all this casual nature with it. And what I'm doing is just rising up onto the tip and just dragging color around. That's all. So the main things that I want to put in is the deep part of the rose, which is the deep throat of the rose, and then the bowl of the rose, okay? Now, let's put some warmer reds. We're going to paint the heritage roses. So let's take some warmer red. And as I come up into the medium values, I'm going to put in some open medium this time. Maybe a touch of the quinacridone into this so it's not so warm. A little bit of white. Raise the value up. Add open medium to it this time. This is going to keep it wetter and a little thicker because now I'm into the medium values of the rose. And this is not going to be the color of the rose. This is something for me to work my whites into. So I want to set up a white side. So when I look at a rose, you see all of these pinks and everything in it. I just don't go from that color to that color. You'll see some of the warmer tones that are in there. And I want to deposit some of those warmer tones in here as well. Right in here, that'll be nice. And this is what I love to do. Now, if you're painting with oils, because you could use this technique in oils, don't use your hands. Go ahead and use another brush and pull through to soften it. But the heritage is non-toxic and everything, so I love to kind of smear it around like this, especially when I get some of those softer edges there. And I'll just smear around my rose like that till it becomes nice and soft. So I'm working around and around and around here, pushing some of this color in, pushing in and out here, which is what these petals do. And I can change it all up. So if I take too much out, which I probably did a little bit, but that's okay, I'll add a little more paint. It's a shadow, so it's a little bit of extender. A little more paint into here. We'll push some more shadow. Shadows are a little more transparent. And this keeps them from eating away my whole rose if my colors are a little bit more transparent. They don't have the power of the other one. So this is what I start to look for, to start to pulling some of that color there. And let's just put a heavy dose of that shadow right over here. Real casual. And just pull it in and out a little bit. That's what I'm looking for, that casual expression right there. A little bit of extender here. Boom. Wiggle it around a bit. Heavier to the bottom side of the rose. Lift the pressure. Just kind of push it around a bit. Here. Heavier line here. You know, we might make this the main rose. I really love, because I'm kind of growing the size of it. So we might make it the main rose here. Here, because I have lots of room to grow this one. Or we push it behind and I grow this one. What do you think we should do? We could do either. We're the boss of this rose. So see, I love this kind of stuff. See, I just go boom like that. That immediately says nice soft front of the rose. If you're not using your hands and stuff, just use your brush and use powerful marks here. And you can take another brush, or you can take this brush here like this, wipe off the color and just pull through and pull it out, And you could take a softer brush and pull in. You could take your original brush with some of that blue and pull in like that. Look at that beautiful edge that gives that, see? So you have that little bit of this blue background through and pull in like this, and look at what it does to your rose. Okay, so there's lots, and it takes a little bit of those other colors out there as well. That's just really pretty. What I want to paint really, really super pretty whimsical roses, I get this real blurry look to them. I don't call it a blended look. I call it a blurry. It's like you've spun the camera lens around a little bit and blurred it up. That's when I think they get really pretty here. So let's just drop some heavier. We'll work to go back to this one up at the top, I think. Which means I got to give it a little bit more contrast, a little bit more interest, a little more turning around up here. See, that blue is still wet. It'll stay wet for quite a while. I like that. We'll push this shadow down into this rose a bit. So we'll increase the size of this top rose so it'll overtake that one. And it will come up on top now. Size and contrast, that's what makes it the number one. I love this kind of mark that's here. Let's do it here. I'm just going to wipe my thumb and just pull right across like that. You could add, so you see that light pink is really kind of pretty in there. I could use a bit more in some areas because this will, these pinks will soften out as I go to paint more of the rose. You could actually, shape up a lot of the rose here with some of these pinks, see? So shape it up first with the pink colors and not go right directly into the whites. Here, let's set that a little darker. Shadow color is extender. Let's push that back down in there. Open this one up a bit more. Now we'll wipe that brush, pick up a little bit of the open medium and some of that pink and pull some of the softer pink petals here as well into this rose. Maybe a bit out here, softness there. That's kind of pretty. So you can see right here, it's the three main part of the rose, right? It's the center, it's the bowl, and here, I don't take the bowl all the way up and around. That creates too much roundness. I put the bowl shadow down into where you really see the bowl shadow down on the bottom side here, okay? A little bit of that softer pink. Now, so that softer pink is in there. Now we can start lightening things up a bit. So now I'll paint, as I start to the light side, I paint everything thicker with the open medium, okay? So I'll add some more open medium over here. We'll grab some white. This is where I really like the filbert, is that I'll put it up onto the side like that. Do you see that? So the light is right up onto the side of this petal. And this is softer. It's not pure white. It's got the pinks mixed into it. But I use that to start to draw that petal. See, I just roll over and just draw the petal. Now, before I continue, okay, there's so many, and there's been so many, and I've seen it into the comments because I read every one of your comments. So many of you to sit there and say, I can't do this. This is too tough. Okay, that's not true. This is art, and art takes practice. There is nothing that is really, truly beautiful that I can show you that you're not going to have to practice. Practice is part of learning how to paint, just like it's part of learning how to drive, like it's part of learning how to speak, how it's part of learning how to write, and learning how to add two numbers together, okay? Anybody can do it, but you have to believe you can do it, and you have to practice and practice and practice, okay? You can do this. So what I'm doing is looking at that edge, drawing the edge here. So the stem would come in like this. This is where my visual is. It's going to be right in here. That stem, if I was to look through the rose, would come in right in here. So everything that I do, I start to pull that line down to where I see that stem, what we call the calyx, will be joining in on that rose. So I'm going to pick up a little more light. And this time I'm going to step the rose petals down a little bit here. I'll pick up a little more light. And let's just do a petal just like that. I love like these big heavy. That's real big heavy white color. Let's put a little bit more onto that. Right in there. I love that when I get that variation of the colors through those petals like that. Now, to go around to the back, I want this a little bit thinner maybe. So I'll add a little extender. I'll just thin it out, the color on my brush a little bit, so it doesn't have as much power here. And I'll just put on some of these petals going around back there so they stay softer. Sometimes I will turn that petal to the outside by doing a little light edge to the outside. Let's go a little bit more of a light edge. So I'll just pick up a little edge of light right like that and draw that to the outside. And that puts that light petal edge to the outside, see? And I like that. Let's pick up a little bit more lighter pink right on the edge of our brush here. And let's put in some light petals. Boom, right up and through here. And I like the jagged edge, but look at how light it is at the edge and then goes into that pink, right? That's kind of what I'm doing here. Now, sometimes if I pull that white in too much, you see me take my hand, start at that shadow and pull out, and I take that shadow right out into the petal, just exactly what you're seeing out here. Does that make sense? Do you know how long it took me to figure that out? Because no one showed me. It took me years of figuring it out and figuring out the consistencies. It took me years of practice. So I'm going to shorten it down for you, but you still have to practice. Okay? All right. So let's come back in. So that's cupping right into here. Let's put in another little petal maybe right here. Stop at that bowl, but it heads right to that. Pull back here. That's kind of a pretty little rose there, right? I like this one. Maybe a little line of it right out here, a little edge. Just a pretty little edge there. I kind of like that, leaving that pink right there and the light right there. Now, as we come over to the other side, maybe I'll come over here to more pink, maybe even a little bit of the violet into it. And we could even thin it down a little bit because we're on the shadow side. Now, we'll first come through with some of these pinks and just do some soft petals right here, pulling in, letting some of this blur out here, right in there. See, this is all really wet still, see? It's all wet. Here, let's take a tiny bit of white with that. Let's just come in and maybe put in the edge of a petal here. Just the idea here. Let that mostly just be blurry. I want this a little different. I want like just a heavy set of the petals here. And then we'll let this just kind of blur up. Ooh, I kind of like that. I kind of like that, even that bit of the blurry, darker pulling out of that. That's kind of pretty right there. Let's take some light, just a little bit of the light right out here, and just some lighter little pink edges here. And maybe, so I'm working around in a circle, and at some point in time, I turn my light from the inside to the outside. So the outside, it makes a petal that goes out. The light turning to the inside makes a petal that's folding into the center of the rose. Okay, that's the difference. But I like this one right here. So how do you do that? We'll take some of our pinks and lights right on the tip of the little filbert and just kind of spin it around in there. Right in there like that, just to create a little movement in there. Take a bit of the light, some open medium here. Let's put in a soft little petal idea right in here. We're on the shadow side of the rose, so we're just going to give soft little ideas here. And you can look for, if you want a jagged, like I showed you, you can jagged some of them up and fold them over and do rolled edges and all that stuff. That's all if you want to. I don't always like to do that. And this is my rose, so I don't always do it. So here, let's just keep this really, really soft there. Let's take a bit of that light, though, right up in the front, right on the edge of the brush here. And we could do a petal here that pulls across, like I showed you on the last ones. I like to keep the roses, really kind of open, so I kind of open that up like that. But we could take a little bit more light, a little heavier into the white here, and even just pull an edge like right across like that. So that petal comes right across the front of the rose. Maybe a touch more white. So a touch more white, I'll turn it and give a little heavier white edge right there. So that comes up. Now, to make that really come out, what I'll do is I'll just take a little thinness of my shadow and just kind of lift up to follow that bowl slightly. Maybe wipe my brush, maybe just pull this one down a bit to just get that movement down a little bit more. So I'm sinking it right in there. I could have maybe a little light petal like right in there, just a different shape to the rose. So, when you first look at these roses like that and all these little marks, they look kind of complicated, but when you break them down and just start slowly painting them, they're not quite so complicated, right? But if you let that original shape just overwhelm you, yeah, you'll get frustrated. I'm going to lighten the front of the rose a bit more here because I can. So I'm going to lighten that just a bit, pull down just a bit more. I love that mark right there. And I think I'm going to walk that a little further back, right into that other one, right there. There we go. That's kind of pretty. Maybe, so it's heading down, but it's kind of pinching down a little bit. So maybe I'll just put a, not quite vertical, but lifting out a little bit more. A few smaller marks like that, and it'll lift it out a bit. Maybe this one coming in, about like that. And this is, you can see how thick the paint is on here now. See, I'm working wet into wet, really thick kind of paint there. And so this is one reason why this white has to be so stiff so that it sticks. So I'll just drop that in, and let's just drop a little bit. See, I have the tiniest bit of white. We'll drop a little bit more right into that one, right in there like that. And we have a pretty little rose. I like that one. Let's work on this one. We won't make this one quite as white. Let's get some of that pink in here. Okay, a little bit of that violet and the pink. Here, a lighter little pink, but not pure white. Let's keep it a little more pink. Maybe we'll leave that there. We'll drop the next one kind of white right in there. Some small light ones. See, I'm just letting the white paint out of my brush as I go around to the back of that flower there. Right? And open medium because I'm now into my middle values here. And maybe some of that right in there. That's a pretty one. Some of this. Just simple. We're going to keep these just simple color movements here. I'm going to go back to some thin, so extender, and reshape some of this just a bit. drop some more shadow in there so that rose doesn't get too light. I could help it out quite a bit by going back to the thicker open medium in this and lightening up the front of this petal a bit more so it has more power to sit up in front of this one here. Ooh, I'll even leave that little straight mark in there. I kind of like that. It's different. So a little thicker, a little lighter, maybe right here pulling across that one, right? Maybe just an edge, tiny bit of color. See, that's really pretty in there. I don't need to get so much white. I just need a tiny bit of white to roll over onto the edge and draw the petal. That's all it needs, because the color is already there. Does that make sense? Maybe a little bit wider on that, so the petal, the lightness of the petal a little bit more. There we go. Let's put an edge onto this one a bit more, right in there. It's kind of pretty. Let's take just some soft color moving around through here. Maybe a few little marks out. Nothing too big. We're going to leave this rose out here really casual. Maybe another little dose of should have put it over here. I don't know why I went over there. Maybe a bit of red into that here. Let's just pull right around here and push some of that red in there and a little bit more of our dark cool. See, I love that. Now I'm going to wipe my brush and I'm just going to move the brush around in the shape of the rose to model that color in there. Then I'll come back to my thicker, lighter pink and just soften some of that. That's what I like. Let's get just a bit of light here. Just a bit. Here, maybe a touch lighter right up here. Like that. That's kind of pretty. I think I'm going to open up. This is going to cause the rose to dip down. And I found this over time by painting, probably after 2,000 roses, I found this, okay, is that if I do this kind of mark and open like this, the rose falls down, opening up, down like this. It leans down, opening up. And I love that. And see, I can just leave that just like that. I have some really nice movements there. I can leave most of that like that. I'll probably put just a few strokes of some lighter pink here, right out here like this, just to say there's some movement of those petals, but I'll let most of this just blur out. Let's take a bit of this reds out a little further here. That's pretty. See, just let that just fall out there like that. That's kind of pretty there. And let's put just a touch of some of that movement in there like we did to the other one. This little point, this is the point of your filbert. That's all it needs in a soft little movement. Maybe a tiny lighter stroke. Tiny bit lighter right in there. Yeah, now we could put, like I did here, that little stroke right there. It's kind of pretty because it makes a nice joining kind of a mark there right along the bowl. It's kind of a neat little mark. It's up to you. I think I'll put just a touch lighter here, right in here. A little bit of that coming out. Yeah. Just the edge. I like that. See that bead of color? I like that. That's the petal edge. But I'm not pulling all the way around. I'm just pulling it just that one side up there in the front. So that's kind of pretty. Now, before I go do maybe that other one, I'm going to take a little bit. Whoops. I'm going to clean that out. I hit the white with that burnt sienna. That's not good. I don't want that. I'm going to put some extender back in my brush. If I touch the water at any time, and always remember this, if I touch that water at any time, water is your solvent. Right now, everything is still wet. Even this color up here is still wet, okay? Everything is still wet. So if I touch water, it'll cut right through it and make a hole. So if I touch water, then I'll go back and flood my brush with a little bit of the extender medium, wipe that out. Now I can go over it and not get a hole, okay? Whereas with water, I get a hole. So I touched that, let's just wipe back right here a bit. See, I love that kind of movement. I want to get that into some flowers someday. I'm going to take some burnt sienna and some green and some extender, because it's a shadow. We'll come in here and we'll paint out just a bit here. Oh, I love that warm and to the cool. That's really kind of pretty. Maybe a bit more on the green side here. Maybe just a touch of light with that, softer. Okay, let's use this to kind of set this shape of this rose here a bit. Fun stuff. Usually I do this with my 3/4. I should. I'm going to take maybe a little heavy on the burnt sienna. So I'm going to pull the stems here down. Here, the ideas of these stems here. Let's pull them down. Give a few stems working through here. A few lines. That's what I like to do. You can use, like I say, the tip of the, I've shown you this 1,000 times, use the tip to emulate like a few little thorns or something right off of that. I don't usually do too much with that. Okay, let's go back to this green here, and this is what I call the negative painting. So I'll actually put in the shadow side of this rose there with the paint. So I'll thin this out a bit here, and I'll paint out here like this, and now it looks like I've got blue in the side of that rose out there, and I don't. I just stepped out into the background. That's all I did, and that's what makes it kind of pretty there. We could take, let's take some of this, let's darken this up a little bit more blue and a little bit more violet here. And we could use that as a deeper version of this up here, which would be pretty. Let me, I'm getting too much brush movement in there for what I like to do with that. So usually I'm into my 3/4 inch brush. It's a little wider, so it doesn't give quite as much. See, it's a little bit smoother. It still has some nice interest, but it's a little bit smoother. And that's what I like back here. So if I see I get too much brush movement into my background, it detracts. That detracts from the painting. So I don't want to do that. So here I'll just mark up a bit here. A little bit of more burnt sienna and green here. I just want to mark up some of the ideas. I don't think I'll paint specific leaves or anything. Maybe I will. Maybe a few just larger, softer ones coming off of here like this. We'll see here. Just a little bit of extender in this. Keep it a little bit thinner because these are shadows, still shadow colors, right? So we'll put a couple in there. Maybe a mark for a little bit of that color right there coming out. So I'm painting for color more than anything else. Now, I love this kind of rosebud, and it would look kind of pretty right in there. So, and I just love that reaction of that warm and that cool here. I'm going to see if I can sneak some of that real warm in right down here. A little bit more. Leave that a little blurry right there. I love the warm and the cool changing. See that nice warm changing right down there. That's really kind of pretty there. A bit more of, make sure we get that nice stem line in there. Like that, maybe a blur across a bit. It's kind of pretty. It's a little straight. There we go. Take it off. Let's get just maybe an edge of that right up here. So we see a bit of that coming out from that flower right there. That's kind of pretty. See, you get that warm cool through there. Isn't that kind of pretty? Yeah. And most of this, guys, is positive attitude. See how I tell myself, ooh, isn't that kind of pretty stuff? I'm pushing myself forward with thought of this. I've never painted this flower like this exactly before. I've painted versions of it. And, you know, but painting is a psychological game. If you sit there and go in there and say, oh, that's ugly, you've just defeated yourself. You might as well let it dry, sand it off, and put your brushes and stuff away. Don't ever let it defeat you. You know, it's a process, and it takes practice. That's all it does, you know. And I'm constantly saying, I say to myself, oh, I love that one, because I do. I like it, and I'm trying things. If I don't like it, I'll go, whoops, that's not right. Just like you saw me do with the, I saw this brush was giving me too much movement into that background. I didn't go, oh, that's ugly. Don't do that. Don't do that. So many of you write into the comments, I can't do it. No, you can. Just don't do that, guys, okay? That's all. Let's just take some of this lighter violet. This is going to be pretty. The violet that we said we saved. And let's push some of that right out into here onto the cool side of this rose. Isn't that pretty? Look at that color. But it has to be light enough. If it's not light enough, if you don't get it light enough, it'll look dead against that color. So you have to, it has to be a couple values lighter than what we used there before. And I've noticed that over time, that's really, really pretty if it's light enough. If you get it too dark, it's not as pretty. So see, we'll put that right in there like that. Isn't that kind of pretty? See that? It gives it that glow. I used to call that years ago the moon glow, the moonlight of the flower. And that actually came, when I started doing this, that came from my studies of Westerns. That's why I'm always pushing everyone to try all different kinds of genres of paintings, because you'll learn all different kinds of things from all of those different artists out there. That's kind of pretty. I like that. That whole feeling. I want to lighten that up, but I like the look of it, so I'm not going to. So let's go back out over here. Let's take a bit of this. Let's paint into this to soften into some of that greens there, because we're going to probably push that one there. Let's go, before I go into the dark this time, let me put up a area of the pink, because you could do this too. I'll show you. We want to keep it, it's a bud, so we want to keep it more oval, right? And then we'll go into our darker colors. Extender, because this is shadow, right? We'll come right into here, and we'll push in that dark here, heavier to this side. This is the shadow side of the flower. A little bit up and around the other side there. But that's the shadow side. So let's get that shadow side pretty heavy here. Let's just get that in there. Plus it's pretty color in there. Let's get a little warmer color. And we can, as we head to those medium warm tones, we could start adding a little bit of that open medium to make it thicker, so it sets up on top of this other color. A little bit of movement there like that. Let's just blur that. Boom. That's pretty. Now we'll look, do we want to do those bigger petals? So we'll go lighter, open medium, pick up that heavier edge. Let's actually set this edge of this rosebud petal right up on top of that one, a little bit more further out, right up on top of that one. Yeah, I know it's a pretty petal, but and then just lift that up and let this rosebud petal actually come up on top of this one a bit. There we go. That's pretty. And we'll go to a lighter little pink here. Right down like that. Soft little color there. I think I'll add, so I'm going to add, and I have to decide, is it a bowl petal, which means the white goes to this side? Is it a reaching petal, a petal coming out from under the bowl, which means the light goes to this side? But I'm gonna soften this with a little dark, walk that out the petal a bit, so I prepare my area there so I can put this other light petal in. Sometimes you see me do that, sometimes not. It's whether or not I think I have enough shadow on there. And I didn't think I had enough. So now when I put this petal will show up definitely because the shadow, I know because I just put a shadow on there. And let's just put one more little light petal right here. Just boom, kind of fill that up a bit, right? You could take some of this pink and kind of swirl it around a bit to emulate more of that other rosebud, right? And you could see that other rosebud has kind of a closing off petal that goes around like that. You could do that if you want. There, close that off. Maybe a softer little light here. Here, just a few petals coming out to the sides. I like that. Sometimes I really just like to wipe my brush here and pull them out, blurry out like that. And keep these softer right out here like that. Blurry. And you could even go back to that real light lavender color. White, the lavender and white here. And add some of that into that rose bud. Add some of that right into here. It's really kind of pretty. Keeps everything soft. Maybe just a touch of it back through here. Keeps everything just kind of soft. Maybe a tiny bit of the light right out here to say, oh, there's a little petal. I love that working all in there. Though I'm going to rinse that lavender out of there and pinch the water out and then put it back into some extender real quick. And then decide, do I need a petal or anything in here, or do I want to leave this more open all about the roses? Let's take some burnt sienna, some blue this time, maybe a touch of violet and that green. This is a darker, cooler color right into that center there. And we might be able to just get this out just with movement, a little color movement here. So a little bit pulled out just to emulate. Let's just put a touch of that. Not much, just a touch. I like that bit of the light coming through there. That's kind of pretty. Yeah, I think that let's go back to our green and burnt sienna extender. So this is thinner, and maybe a little bit of that. Maybe some ideas of little stems or something coming back through out of there. What I call the little sparks of color. Maybe let's fix this one up a little bit more and then let it die out. That's kind of pretty. So you see, I like to let the things kind of fade out, just kind of move and fade out like that. It's really kind of pretty. But if you want to do more structured leaves and stuff, you can do that like I've showed you before in so many other paintings. You can do that. few more little movements right out through here like that. That's kind of nice, maybe. Just some of that right there like that. Yes, I like that. And you know what I really, really like about it is that is some kind of funny, adding that extra little bit of that quinacridone, taking that more to that lavender. And I saw that photo, and you can see that lavender is in all of these heritage roses here. But I like that. And then watching what happens in here is really nice. Really, really nice. The thing is, do you want to, you can negative paint and back paint, putting in little sparks of lavender if you want here. Just to let you, I liked how that puts, try not to get too much, but little sparks of lavender breaking through just kind of breaks up some of the solid areas of the color again. And I really like that. And I do like that super dark there. I could, and this is one thing the good filbert is for, just the front corner of that filbert, just darken that back in there, just a touch. And maybe just a little bit of it right in here on that bull shadow, on that petal. And that just increases the power of that one here. Whatever you want to do, just take that down. Just a touch, a few little marks. There you go. Isn't that pretty? So, 51 minutes. I took a little longer than I normally do. But I love that. I love the warm and cools of this. So if you love it, please tell me down there in the comments. Just go, hey, Dave, I love that one. Okay? That helps. So your comments help our videos get out there, okay? And we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our videos. That'll help us. Coming up in about another month or so, you'll watch it. This painting, along with other paintings, will be coming up into our gallery for sale, because coming up in the month of November, usually the middle part to the end of October, November, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, but at least once a year. It's been over a year and a half since we've done this. We have a big sale, gallery sale. We donate these over to our foundation. Our foundation is what runs this YouTube channel. So that's why we bring so many free lessons to you as much as you can. And we're thankful. And I read all your comments, and I'm really, really thankful for those. But, the foundation buys the cameras and everything that's here, and that comes from selling the paintings, which 100% of every one of those goes over and into the foundation, which again goes back into, we give out some art scholarships, but we go back and fund things like this, free education for artists, okay? So if you would like to collect something like that, keep your eye over on our galleries and stuff, and that'll be coming up hopefully in the next few weeks, or, maybe a month. Just keep an eye. I'll tell you on the channel here and stuff, but I'll put this one up in there too, so you can, if you want to collect one like that, that'd be great. Okay, we'd love to see it. Until then, I think we'll go back over to some of our landscape studies and studying the depth and perspective of depth and stuff, and maybe some quick landscapes. And then I got that real big one where you can see the black and white of it up here. That's the size of it. It's a big landscape we're going to do that I call Through the Wind River, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do. Those of you that are looking for the framing and stuff, we're also filming some of the framing and stuff videos, and we'll be putting those over into our membership and stuff, which helps. The membership is the other thing that helps support the channel. Okay? Thanks very much, guys. And hope you give that a try. That lavender is really pretty. I like that. And that is like, got to remember that one. Okay. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.